Welcome to Spirited Straight Talk, the ultimate podcast for anyone who is ready to live a life with intention and help from spirit. I am your host, Deb Shepard, spiritual teacher, medium, and author, helping you open up to the whole enchilada, or like we like to say, the soul enchilada, so you can truly make your soul rise. So let's go. This is Deb Shepard, again on Spirited Straight Talk with my partner, Dana.
Hola.
Hola. We're here to talk about forgiveness today. And I really hope that you had the chance to listen to the last two podcasts where Dana shared her story regarding her childhood and what she endured and went through and the trauma with that. And society really thinks that forgiveness is divine, and we kind of have a different take. And
just to give you, society preaches that you have to forgive, you have to let go in order for your heart to heal.
Correct.
And okay, so we'll just start with that.
and I was thinking about this podcast about this last year. I decided to apologize to a few people because I had hurt their feelings. Mm-hmm. And my joke has always been that I have a podiatrist for my mouth because I'm always sticking my foot into it. And it's hard when you hurt people that you love. It's never, for me, it was never an intentional thing.
Right.
But it's a feeling, it's an emotion. And, I think in your situation, it was intentional.
Yeah, there's
very
a
different.
Big difference. I know I have things that I probably should apologize for and ask people to forgive me. Minor things, things that maybe were not intentional, or things that I did when I was setting my boundaries on how people treat me. Mm-hmm. But there's a big difference between an unintentional thing that somebody's done versus a very intentional inflicted thing that somebody's
and we're all human.
Purposely done.
We're all human. We're all going to make our choices and mistakes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But when it's repetitive or it goes to the core. So I teach a class, I have for years, on soul's contracts, and it's about why we're here and what lessons we're learning in this lifetime for enlightenment. And of course, one of the topics is definitely forgiveness. And during these classes, I've had Dana share a little bit about her story of her childhood, not to the extent that we have done with the two podcasts, but just an appetizer, let's say. Mm-hmm. And then we give our interpretation of forgiveness. Now, if you can forgive, and that's really what you believe, and that's something that you want to do, and you believe that your soul needs it, go for it.
Yeah.
But we want to give a different type of insight regarding forgiveness because we do believe that there's more than one way to heal.
Yeah, and there's tools that you can use to help yourself through your path to forgiving or being forgiven, or deciding whether or how you forgive, mm-hmm. how you choose to forgive.
And anytime there's been a trauma in our lives of betrayal or hurt, whatever that looks like for each person, everyone has their own time frame of healing and grief. And I've always said this with grief, everyone grieves differently.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing, it's grief, because when you love somebody and you trust them and then you're hurt, you have to go replay, like, how do I trust again? How do I open my heart again? How do I allow people in my life? Is this going to happen again? But it's really your time frame of what you need to do. It's like your own compass mm-hmm. to go through it. Mm-hmm. And for you, it was years before you would even talk about
my situation. Yeah. I went through extreme childhood trauma and abuse. And
for years.
For over 10 years of extreme childhood abuse, to where my growth was stunted. I wasn't fed. I was
beaten, almost killed.
Right. So listen to the last two podcasts for the complete rundown, but that's what happened. And I think in talking to people after the fact, and certain people in my life, they place the burden of forgiveness on the victim.
Correct.
So they basically put it in the victim's lap to figure out how, or to forgive so they can move on. That's what's kind of preached, is you need to forgive so you can move on. And so they put the burden of forgiveness in your lap as the victim. Now, on the flip side, if you are somebody who's done something and you need forgiveness, what you're talking about is if you need forgiveness, there's not a time limit on that person forgiving you. And I guess take into consideration what's happened and what's been done.
And for some people, it's not comparing what someone else did to you
Right.
or what's happened. And I think people think, well, mine wasn't as bad. Well, that doesn't mean it was bad or good. It means that you were offended and affected, and it has affected your entire life and your being. But what we try to teach in this kind of idea is you don't have to forgive in order to have a great life and to be whole. And you want to kind of share some of your insight that you tell some of the students about not forgiving and why?
Sure, yeah. My feeling around forgiveness is that I suffered such an extreme trauma as a child. I, at a certain point in time, really decided I don't have to forgive. I don't have to accept what they did to me as being okay. I am not in a position to be able to say what you did was okay. I let go of it, or I forgive it.
And they haven't apologized either, taking ownership.
No, one of them has.
Okay.
One of them has.
Okay.
But I don't have to absolve you of what you did, because what you did was wrong. And I don't have to want a relationship. I don't need that relationship in my life. That relationship is detrimental. And so my choice is, you know what? You did what you did. It's up for you to forgive yourself if you want to forgive yourself, but I don't have to be a part of that. And I don't have to let go of what you did to me.
And I think the word resolve is really the key here, because what forgiveness means is I forgive you for what you have done to me. Now, granted, you can forgive people for
of course
different things, and I've asked for forgiveness, but it's so
minor and major, but unintentional hurt,
intentional for years. And I think it gave people, when you shared that point of view, a lot of people felt empowered, because they were carrying around this guilt that I have to forgive them. I have to forgive. And so it was constantly this energy that they felt like they were not doing it right. They were not healing correctly, which has that wound begins to hurt even more, because you're adding that other guilt. The pressure of
you have to be able to forgive in order to move on. Yeah, and I don't feel that way. I don't have to carry what they did to me in that way and I don't have to absolve them of what they did.
Absolve, that's the word.
Yeah, I don't have to,
magic wand. It's all gone.
Yeah, I'm not going to wave a magic wand and just tell them, oh, what you did is fine.
But you can use the experiences as lessons.
Yes.
What did you learn from it? How do you change your future choices? How do you create other boundaries or learn to say no? Because sometimes forgiveness allows people to do it again. And I've heard this with people in relationships where someone is betraying the marriage. And they're forgiven, and then that person continues to do it. And so you're continually hurt. Again. And how often can you how often can you forgive? And I think there is the point when people are intentionally, they keep going back to that place. When you're forgiving them, it's almost like there's no price to pay for hurting. Again, a first-time offender that, this is what's happening, but looking at where are they accountable for the pain that they've caused. And over the other kind of podcast, we were talking about boundaries and abandonment, but we're talking about narcissists.
Yes.
And if you are in a relationship or have been in a relationship with people that are narcissists, forgiving them just gives them a bigger door to walk through.
Right.
So it's learning that person's personality, why do they have to do these things, and why are they always picking on you? It's kind of the way I'm getting it.
Right.
With the bully.
Right. So I want to share a little bit of a story without actually sharing all the details of who and what, but this is an example of a situation that I've observed that has given somebody else in my life the perspective of forgiveness is divine and you have to forgive. So I do have somebody in my life that their loved one crossed over and they feel responsible for it in some way. Mm-hmm. And I think what's happening is they need to forgive themselves for their responsibility that they feel. So they project that forgiveness, that others need to take that same stance in order to move forward in their life, when that I don't think that's necessarily true.
It's that projection of you need to do this, and it's like, no, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't need to forgive, but I'm not. You don't live in that space,
right?
And there's the difference: is if you're living in that past and you're constantly revisiting that, and it's keeping you from having a full life. Maybe forgiveness is part of it,
right?
But I want people to understand that you don't have to.
But in that case, it is self-forgiveness.
Yes,
it's saying, "Hey, this happened, and I need to forgive myself for what happened." But telling everyone else that they need to be in that same space as them is not. So I think really part of it is honoring the journey that somebody else is having, and not projecting your personal feelings for yourself onto others.
Correct.
And that's one thing that I've observed as well with forgiveness.
And I'll tell people, I'll see where maybe some things that could help them. And they say, well, I should be doing this. And I'm like, no, I'm giving you some ideas, but you get to decide how you want to do it, because everyone has a different memory, a different feeling, a different emotion. And those experiences are personal. Your healing is a personal
journey. Yeah, and decision. And so if someone else telling you what you should do, even when someone's asking, like that whole force, you need to be forced to do it now, because it's not going to go away. It's actually going to probably be more difficult, right?
Because you're feeling all the guilt.
You haven't gone
and shame.
Through the entire process.
Yeah. People are judging you, things like that, and it's stepping back, going, they have to have their own time.
Yeah, and I think it is a process. The journey is a process on how you actually decide to get to that place where you make a choice on how you're going to handle that situation. Right. It's a process. It's a process.
And I think reminding yourself to show your compassion, that you are aware of the story, you're aware of what happened, you're claiming it, you're trying to figure out how to heal. And I know for me, and this is I've done a lot of work on my past, but occasionally something will happen, and 40 years later, I feel like it's right that I'm right back where I was. And it's just for a temporary moment of time, but I do go back into those places where I have to look at it again and take one more layer off. So I don't think it ever really goes away. It just, you have better ways of processing it, putting the words to it, the emotions to it, finding someone safe to discuss it, so you feel like someone is actually listening versus telling you what to do. And I think that's the key. We talk about holding space for someone. You don't have to give advice when someone's telling you their story, because you're not there to fix it.
Right. And they're more telling you, here's what you should do versus...
What do you need?
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to know what you need.
So if you are there helping somebody or you need help, just put out there, I just need someone to hear my story, but I really don't need advice, because I just feel like if I tell the story, it's going to help me realize where it affects me in my life and how I can maybe change those things. And that's what you've done.
I have.
You have. Well, hopefully most of us, but since we just told your story in the two podcasts, we're trying to relate to that. And if your body feels that you really, truly can't forgive, be okay with that. And if someone tells you that you have to, no, you don't. Just be really clear, like, no, I feel okay that I don't have to forgive them. And, it's okay. I think that's the bottom line, because I think when people say, well, I can't forgive, there's a lot of criticism that goes on. And
I think it could create a little bit of guilt for yourself as well. And having that guilt, like, why can't I get over this? Or why can't, we hear that a lot when people share their stories, is why can't I just move on? Why can't I get over it? give yourself permission to take it step by step. Right?
There's no finish line. Like, I've got to get it done at this point. And when people are grieving, they say, I feel like I've gone backwards, and that's okay too, because we revisit things to look at it differently.
Right.
And our soul's not ready to say, I'm over this yet.
And I think that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure that you put on yourself. It's your decision, despite what anyone else says. It's your decision. Take your time and take into consideration what you've been through. Have they apologized? Has it been resolved?
Do they continue to do it?
Right. Have you set your boundaries? And are they adhering to that?
And if it's someone that has passed, know that you can still talk to them because they don't carry that stuff with them. But if it's occurring similar to other people in your life, then that's something you want to voice, like you said, put some boundaries, allowing people to know that that's not going to work for you. And I think especially women, we have a tendency to let people take advantage or let it happen again. And I think it's learning to say, I don't want to be treated like this anymore. And I agree. Like I said, I've upset a few people recently, and I feel really bad because it's never my intention. But, I did apologize. I don't know if one of them has even thought about forgiving me, but that's okay. She doesn't have to. But it's my journey of learning, and I'm realizing that I've got to forgive myself. And that can be hard to do.
So what are some things you think people can do, some steps they can take?
Well, I think the one thing is, don't put a time limit on it. If it's something happened 30 years ago, it doesn't really matter how long ago it happened. It's the fact that it's there with you. I think the other thing is, don't put it in a box that you have to do certain things in order for it to heal, that your soul is going to tell you what you need. If you share with somebody, let them know in advance that you're not looking for advice. You're just looking for someone to be able to hear you without interrupting and without making them feel guilty again or rehashing that feeling. And think about how you want it to look. I think sometimes we don't have a goal in mind of what we want to do in the healing process. I think sometimes people feel or say, well, if you forgive, then it's gone. And that's why there's that, ride that we keep going on, that Ferris wheel, versus saying, what is my goal by dealing with this? What do I want to feel? How do I want to move forward? And, I think everyone has a different idea what that may be. I think for you, it's just not living there and thinking about, I don't want to be in that space all the time or feel ashamed for telling your story, and to know that the story can help other people as well. But I think it's taking the pressure off yourself.
Yeah.
There isn't a time frame, and there isn't an ending. I think that's it. There is no end to it in the sense of, okay, today I'm going to wake up and not deal with it anymore. We can ignore it, but it's still going to be there. Did you have any suggestions of what?
I think the couple things I would share is, don't let other people tell you what your time frame is on forgiveness. Don't let them set the expectation for you. You're allowed to communicate what your expectation is of how they support you. I would also say, show yourself compassion. Have that self-love to give yourself the time to deal with whatever it is you're going through. Don't put pressure on yourself, like you said. Don't give yourself a timeline on how and why you need to do it a certain way. Basically, just let yourself go through the process and figure it out as you go. And also take into consideration, everyone is human. If the situation is one where it is extreme trauma, like what I had, does it benefit you to go to that place of forgiveness? Or is it more about your self-love and your nurturing of yourself? Because ultimately you are the one who has to live with it, regardless of the decision you make.
And I think what happens for some people going through these journeys is they may isolate themselves. And that might be okay once in a while, but it's also valuable for you to be with other people going through that space, as long as they're not judging. And by burying it deep can also affect your health. And that's why it's important too to know that if we get this stuff out and we begin to understand it in a different way and have different ways of seeing what our journey was about, and maybe it's about helping other people with it. That's why you shared your story, because you didn't think it was going to help.
Right.
And people are coming back going,
you convinced me.
I convinced her. Because when you share that story, other people are not going to feel so alone or isolated or thinking that it was their fault or that they don't deserve. So that acknowledging it, telling the story, being, looking at the elephant in the room can also help in your entire being of healing and allowing you to have relationships that you can trust.
Right. I think that's the big thing is trust. Building that trust within yourself and with others after you've gone through something traumatic or whether it's very traumatic or not. It still is a boundary that's crossed. Yeah.
If it's still sitting there, you keep going back to it or feeling it, thinking about it, then to me, find a way that works for you, that feels safe. Is it with a therapist? Is it with a friend? Is it with a clergy? But again, set what you need from that individual when you're working with them. So, I do a lot of work with people that have died from suicide, they have lost loved ones. And there's a lot of guilt with suicides.
I think guilt is the biggest topic.
Yeah.
With forgiveness. They go hand in hand.
They do. And so when I am working with these families who've lost someone from suicide, the guilt is how do they forgive themselves? And it's understanding then what mental health is and what depression is and all these other things, because we always believe we should have helped them or we should have been there and all that should stuff. And a lot of
those are guilt words.
Those are guilt words again. So it's learning.
Should, would, could.
Have to. And
yeah.
It's understanding the illness, and it's understanding that we can't take control of somebody else's behavior and choices. And so how do we balance those two things? And I'm not saying you have to forgive the person that suicided or forgive yourself for not protecting them, but it's learning more about it so that you can have those great memories and start connecting and changing the way you live your life. And it's not an easy job, but it can be done.
Yeah.
So this is our take on forgiveness. We hope this helps a few of our listeners, because the way it's always been shown or taught is that we have to do this way. And we want people to know there are multiple ways to heal, not just that one.
And multiple ways where you can help yourself move forward.
And when you do that, you're going to help other people. And that's what Dana telling her stories, that they don't have to forgive those individuals, but she can still have a blessed life.
Yeah. I guess that's the soul enchilada.
That's a soul enchilada.
Good job, Deb.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us once again. We will see you again next week.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Spirited Straight Talk. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so that you get notified of new shows. We'd also love it if you'd leave us a review. And let's connect. Visit debshepard.com for more insights, support, workshops, and to book a session with Deb. Plus, enter to get a free reading with Deb. All you have to do is sign up for the email list and you'll automatically be entered. Just go to debshepard.com. That's DEBSHEPPARD.com.